I applaud Elon Musk. He has found an enormous amount of waste, specifically fraud and abuse. And he did that by getting into the government and showing us how fraudulent he is.
Welcome to Middle Ground. I'm Ryan, your host. On this side, we have people who are pro-Musk, and on this side, people who are anti-Musk. The first prompt is, Elon Musk is a genius. Let's have the agreeers step forward. Welcome. Who'd like to go first?
Yeah, objectively, IQ. I think that's all I really need to say for my argument. I mean, whether you agree with what he's doing or not, objectively his IQ would state that he is a genius. I think that's argument done and dusted right there.
Yeah, the prompt of him being a genius, to me, we know that there are mad geniuses, there are evil geniuses, there are just neutral people. But Elon Musk, we're talking about the ability to receive information, act on information, juggle the amount of balls that he juggles. You could argue he doesn't always do it perfectly. But this isn't about his virtue or his character. This is about whether or not he has a higher intellect than the average person. He's a genius. He's just not necessarily the best of people.
Yeah, I think when we're analyzing intelligence, it's important to consider what that actually means. So can he analyze highly technical and highly theoretical questions? Yes, he has demonstrated that time and time again. When he interviews people for his company, he launches a litany of super highly technical questions at them, which he himself understands, and he's able to do that in many, many different industries. And he's able to innovate around regulations and processes that other people would otherwise feel constrained by. So I think in practice and in theory, he is a genius.
I mean, when you just look at the breadth, the amount of companies he's created, all successful, all in completely different areas, and the fact that maybe you could say Benjamin Franklin is ahead and Leonardo da Vinci is probably still up there, but I think he's in the top 5, and I felt he was going to be in the top 5 for a long time of most innovative, incredible people of all time. But you know, when you put that genius in the free market, this is what you get, and you get someone that is affecting the world in so many different, I mean, I can't remember just studying, like, wait, he did this company, I can't even remember all the companies that he's created, and he's constantly doing more, and he's not scary, but we'll get into that later. Like, people think he's scary. I mean, again, you're in the free market. We're not in the government. He's in the free market, but anyway.
Got it. So you joined us after a little belatedly, I should say. What brought you over?
You had me at evil genius. That's where you got me. I think that he's an incredible marketer. He's done so much while doing so little. There is intelligence to what he's doing. If you look at his history, for me, it's not striking of something I would want to emulate, but you can't deny that he's been remarkably successful in ways that a lot of, really nobody else has.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
What do you mean by he's done so little?
Most of his accomplishments he didn't do. Most of the things we credit him for, he didn't do. He didn't found PayPal. He sued to get his name on the letterhead.
That's not true.
He didn't found Tesla. He sued to get his name. Or excuse me, you're right. Actually, he didn't sue to get his name on the letterhead. It was part of his agreement. But he wasn't a founder in any of these places where he's been. However, he's figured out a way to get the general American public to think, oh my God, Elon Musk invented these things.
Let's go ahead and bring over the disagreeers.
So I'll start real quick. I heard somebody say above average intelligence, and something I'm not contending is that Elon might be a smarter guy. I don't know him personally. Fair. I've seen him speak on a lot of things, and he has a very high vocabulary, and he clearly knows a little bit about, obviously, the inner workings of his company. Now, where I'm seeing a lack of genius intellect, or intelligence, we might say, is when you torture a company who at the pinnacle of December was at the highest evaluation that it ever was, and now it's down 71%. This is unprecedented when we're looking at especially auto manufacturers. So if you take the losses of Tesla since December in 4 months, that is more than the entire entity of Toyota, of BMW, of Ferrari, of F1.
Can I ask
that is insane, and that's not a genius move.
What big moment has happened since December, though? Yeah, I guess that's my thing, is like we've seen a big thing that's happened since December that could very much contribute to those drop in prices, i.e., him being very involved in the current president's administration. Yeah, I think, but I do agree. That's fair. I'm fair and analyze. I mean, you analyze that very well. True, it is unprecedented how big of a plummet. But I think that's like just saying it at And maybe you were getting to that. Maybe I cut you off. I apologize if I did.
Yeah, so I'll speak to that. I think that saying that his involvement in politics is a little bit of an easy answer.
Fair.
Definitely that's ruined the reputation, especially with a majority of his consumer base. And when you are the head of a company, playing to who your customers are is an important part of delivering what they want. So yeah, the top 10 bluest states were all Tesla fiends. They love Tesla.
True.
And now you've alienated them when you've said Democrats are Satanists that are helping the cabal. Like, that is not something that's
But
helping.
maybe he's just a genius at also tanking companies. Like he can build them up, and he can nobody does it.
But
like
going
him.
back into that, I don't think politics is the only answer for why his evaluations have plummeted. It's also lack of foresight. So talking about someone who's a genius or has this high level of intellect, when you're promising fully self-driving cars year after year for the past decade and haven't delivered on that, investors are starting to notice you might be full of shit. And that's something that is important when you are the head of a company, is that you keep over-promising and giving all this confidence. And don't worry, guys, we'll be in Mars in 4 years. I guarantee that. And then you don't deliver on any of those promises. Yeah, people are going to say that you're not the genius that you keep presenting yourself as.
One of the ways that you lay that out is you look at, I think it's $122 billion actually that he has lost right out of his pocket since he joined the Trump administration at the beginning of the new year. It's been a catastrophe for him financially.
When you have $400 billion,
and for his
that's not a
companies.
huge loss,
And
I will
so,
say.
sure, but you can look at that. You can look at that as stupidity, a lack of genius. You could also look at it through the lens of incredible self-sacrifice for things that he actually cares about. He's doing all this supposedly because he wants to be an interplanetary species, take the world to Mars, all that kind of stuff. What kind of person does this to their companies just for a political project? I would say it's somebody who actually has a higher aim, and money and loss of it is not really that important.
I just want to say, too, the stock is down about 40% from its high. It was 480. Every stock in the stock market is down 40, 50, 60% right now from its high. It's just like every other stock.
Particularly bad.
No,
Thank you for
it's not.
acknowledging that.
It's
Thank you for
not.
conceding that.
I've been in the stock market since I was 6 years old. They're all down 40% from their inaugural.
But I think
I just want to real quick make like a 10-second thing, and then y'all can talk. But like everything that you're speaking to is like great man theory of history. Is that history is told by the few biographies of a few great men. Elon is this revolutionary innovator, and you specifically talked about it with Benjamin Franklin and Leonardo da Vinci.
Yep.
Like sure, these people have contributed to the ethos of how history has played out, but all of these innovations in these companies are because of the workers, because of the engineers, and because of the scientists who have developed these innovations. Elon is not writing the formulas that are going to get us to Mars. Elon is pocketing the money that's going to make those people be able to function.
Yeah, I mean, I just take issue with the word genius. Like, he's a risk taker. He has a very grandiose sense of self-importance, which sometimes can amount to good things if you have a lot of capital to work with. Like, with Tesla, sure, he helped them, like, vertically integrate their supply chains, and that was good for Tesla. So he's above average when it comes to, like, capital allocation, but part of being a genius should be knowing your limitations.
I can't help but notice in this conversation right now, on the one hand, when we were talking about being a founder of a company, there is a definition, and then there's a connotation.
Yeah.
You all were very happy
I agreed
with
with
the
him about the
connotation,
founder. No, I agreed with the
But now
founder. I
that we're
agree with
talking
the-
about,
no, I agree with the
not
definition.
everyone did.
No cross-talk.
But now when we're talking about what it means to be a genius, and the definition of genius is also much more highly contested than the definition of what is a founder, whether your names are in the articles of incorporation, whether you were on the initial board of trustees, however large your company might have been, whether you had the initial idea, that's very separate than what it means to be a genius. Like we can agree that maybe Elon Musk is very good at investing money. He's very good at finding engineers for his projects. We've seen that throughout all of his companies. There's no doubt about that he's smart, that he might have some intelligence. Although even throughout school, his grades were low, just like they were for a lot of other people. We would actually assign the title of genius to, infamously, Albert Einstein. But to say that he's somehow so far ahead of the curve, historical example, invention of the printing press. There were at least 3 or 4 or 5 people across Europe who were simultaneously working on it who had no idea that each other were doing it. Electric vehicles were in the Jetsons. It was not an
but they were initial dead.
original
They were
idea.
dead by the time
That's
Elon Musk
about
came
investing
around.
into Tesla. That is not about having the intellect and
No, but
genius to design
He
an electric
understood
engine.
what was going to be valuable in an electric car. People looked at electric
Did he
cars
design the
like
electric car?
they were golf
Did he
carts.
design the electric car?
He designed
That's
a
yes
lot
or
of the
no.
aspects of Tesla.
So
He absolutely did.
Cadillac.
The only
He
thing-
made it a
No,
luxury
the only
sports
thing-
car.
The only patent that he holds for Tesla is the shape of the charging port. He owns no patents. He designed nothing but the charging port.
doesn't matter. We
and
have
every year,
That
they
does
have
matter. That-
hold on real
Watch
quick.
out.
Every year they have the same argument. Hey, let's make a self-driving car to be a taxi with no steering wheel. And he wants that. And everybody's like, that's impractical.
Are they not launching in Austin right now?
He says it. He's been saying that for 10 years.
They're literally launching right now.
They said that 10 years ago. We don't know if they're actually going to come through. The point is, objectively, Elon Musk is great at making himself a lot of money.
Hey, before we go any further, we want to take a moment to say thanks so much to Straight Arrow News for powering the fact checks in this video. Straight Arrow News is on a mission to raise the bar on journalism in a time of media bias and mistrust. Straight Arrow News helps you quickly find trusted information you need to understand the news, allowing you to dive deep into the topics that matter to you and the world around you. Their work is trying to break the bias bubble, helping you understand how every side of the political spectrum is reporting on a story so you can get a full picture of the news. That's why we're so happy to be partnering with Straight Arrow News. They deliver the facts, unbiased, balanced, and designed to make sense of a complex world, getting you the clarity you deserve and news you can trust. Go to san.com/middleground or click the link in the description to check it out. By clicking that link, you're not just supporting this channel, you also take advantage of a better way to get the news. Welcome back to Trustworthy Journalism. Thanks again to Straight Arrow News for partnering with us on this episode. Now, let's get into it.
The next prompt is, X, formerly Twitter, got worse under Musk. All right. These agreeers were so excited. Invite you over. You're already so excited to talk. Who's going to go first?
For me, the reason I came up is I think the reason it's worse now is it's now politicized as much as I want it to not be. It is a tool for, and even on my side as a conservative, I mean, it is a talking point for us as this is our freedom of speech here. I don't like that. It's not what social media is for. It's meant for us to connect and just get to know each other, learn more about each other. It's not meant to be this political tool. So I think where I do like who is running it now, and I agree with the ideas behind as to why he wanted to do it. And but I think for me, what ruined it is you can't talk about X or Twitter. It's even that thing where we have to say X and Twitter, all that. Like, you can't talk about it without it being more than just a social media thing. And I think that's what ruined the whole root of it. Like, that crumbled it for me. That's why I personally don't use it. I don't care who's behind it.
It's not just that, but like it's unusable. The amount of bots on there when you're looking at replies, the amount of just spamming anti-Semitic and racist and sexist, like just straight up slurs, where before on Twitter, sure, there might have been some issues with the algorithm, but at this point, it's like such a free-for-all that 90% of the traffic you see isn't even real people. And then at that point, it's like, how much are we amplifying certain movements, making them look bigger than they actually are?
I've never understood this perspective, because I've been on Twitter since it originated, and I have never seen any vile, like, out of proportion sort of anti-Semitism, bigotry on my Twitter timeline. I just don't.
You're one of the lucky few.
No, I just,
in a rare position.
No,
You are
so lucky.
I follow a lot of people. I see a lot of stuff on Twitter. I just don't see it going, oh, now it's so much worse. And to the point, like, I'm here as a pro-Musk person who thinks that X has gotten worse. I think that his acquisition of X was important. I think it was a populist move by a multi-billionaire to actually try and pass the mic around to everyday people. But there's a huge problem with what he did with the verification process and the doling out of blue check marks. Making that populist and taking away any sort of discrimination between who is a verified, important, influential person has not been good for the dissemination of ideas and credibility on X, which is what it was for. That was a place where news broke, where discussion was driven at the highest level, and now every time you think you're talking to an important person, you're talking to some guy in his mom's basement. It's ridiculous, and it has not been helpful for X.
The Lily Phillips fiasco was personally really funny to me, but if I'm an investor in advertisement, I probably don't want to invest in an infrastructure that's helping disintegrate the profile of major pharmaceutical or other corporations. So yeah, I think it's just really interesting to see that we talk about, you know, the Second Amendment being written for a time when weaponry was at a certain level, and maybe there's discussions about, like, should people own a machine gun? Does the right to bear arms allow you to have a nuke in your house? Most people would probably say there's moderations, with the exceptions of some libertarians. But I think that, like, X in particular is like, it's interesting to see, is this a new weaponry of like what freedom of speech means? Because someone like Elon who can tweet, hey, I have funding secured to take my company private, and completely take the stock portfolios of people who are investing in Tesla, enough so to the SEC has to fine him, and him and his company have to pay $20 million each. Like, this is an irresponsible use, especially when you are like at such a high level of impact and influence, that I think it's worth having a conversation of, you know, does everybody need to say everything that's on their mind at all times without having the emotional intelligence to think about it before pressing send?
Yeah, I agree.
My bigger concern is the illusion of free speech and sort of the previous regime of Twitter and X, where there was sort of this idea that we were all speaking freely and openly, and certain links to certain stories, Hunter Biden, wasn't being suppressed in some sort of weird way. And that to me is more scary, when people think you're on a free speech platform and then you're not. The fact that Twitter might just be a complete populist meltdown right now, where anybody can say anything they want and amplify all their speech, I would take that and that status quo over one where you're sort of deceived into believing that people are speaking.
We still have that right now. I think one of his baby mamas called him out, and he just like blocked her. He like shut down her account, suspended her account. He amplifies people he agrees with. There was this one guy that was like tracking the movements of his jet, which is like public information. He shut down his account.
That one down.
So like, it's interesting where it's like when the shoe's on the other foot, a lot of these free speech principles kind of just disappear, and he's doing a lot of the same things he complained about initially. So I don't really see it as being better even on that front. I think in basically every regard it's gotten like markedly worse.
Now let's bring in the disagreeers who have been itching to talk.
The problem is there's 10 billion things I want to say. We're not going to have time for it. So let me make this abundantly clear from the beginning, especially for the viewers, because they're going to think everybody on this side is a conservative Republican. I have never voted Republican in my life, and the people at Jubilee probably know from my biography. I've played 4 times at the White House. I'm a professional musician, and all for Democratic presidents. Okay, so let's keep that clear. Now, the only
Thanks for your service.
And your sacrifice.
Yeah, exactly. So the only way, if we look at Twitter until Elon bought it, the only way you would think that Twitter was somewhat even in any way is if you went to bed every night with AOC and the Squad blankets and a Bernie Sanders teddy bear. That would be the only way that you would think that Twitter was even, it was 1,000% controlled by the left.
The issue with talking about like disproportionate enforcement on somewhere like Twitter is like, for example, the 2020 election. If one side is disproportionately lying and saying the election was stolen, and then you say, why is Twitter cracking down on the right? Maybe because those people were like telling more lies,
It's
violating
okay.
TOS.
Lies
more.
are fine.
Well, TOS exists, right? And it's a private company. And if they don't want like complete disinformation being spewed out, then that's their
Who
right
gets to
prevent
decide
that.
what disinformation
Exactly.
is?
Yeah.
Now,
The people
now
that
on
own the
Twitter,
platform.
Let's raise our
we
hand
have
if the
community
2020
notes,
stole.
right? Which is essentially getting the entire community. You have to agree. Both sides have to agree on a note for it to get posted. That regulates content, so it's not just
Community
one
notes still a
side.
thing? Like, I'm genuinely
Yeah.
curious. I don't think I've seen
It
it.
is.
Elon allows
I saw it for a long
community
time,
notes
like, a
to
couple
attack
months
him and
ago.
say when he's
Yeah.
wrong.
Absolutely. And to be clear, there is something I disagree with Elon on when it comes to X. He should have a firewall between him and content moderation. It's not fair for him to remove journalists from the platform, for example. Like, I think that is a point where he absolutely was a hypocrite, and I'm glad he reinstated the journalists. But I think Twitter, or X, is markedly better because it is the free speech platform. Like,
CNN even had a poll that was 50-50 recently about this.
yeah, and
Left right were happy.
beforehand, I mean, I really got my start on Twitter. Twitter really empowered me to get a job in media, you know, because I grew a following, even though I wasn't a journalist or someone from the elite or someone that anyone should be listening to.
When did you start?
I started in 2019.
Okay.
Yeah, and I remember the before and after of Elon. Before Elon, friends of mine, big accounts, small accounts, would just get plucked.
Babylon Bee, what about that one?
Like overnight,
So
someone would
that's-
vanish.
No, they actually said
People
they just
would
delete a
vanish.
post that had against the TOS. It wasn't just a complete banning of that org. And they said, no, we're going to stand on this business. We're going to be stubborn
Yeah.
about it. We're not going to agree to the TOS. Okay, well, you're not going to be posting
But if I
until
can
you delete it.
continue.
And then they did, wait, one thing. They did delete it as soon as Elon acquired the org and then claimed Elon released them. That's not true. They deleted the posts and they got their account reinstated before Elon even acquired it. So that's just one example of like people, again, using this as politicalization when it's not even.
Every
Yeah.
day.
So
there-
Let's bring it back to.
So again, like I remember friends of mine or just random accounts would get just completely suspended overnight, not be informed of what they did wrong. And this was a really big problem on Twitter. And then when Elon took over, there was confusion about what the content moderation standards would be. And I absolutely admit he definitely made a lot of mistakes in the beginning of that. But to give us the option to allow Donald Trump back on the platform, that was an incredible move, because before, Twitter, like the people content moderating, were being heavily influenced by Joe Biden's campaign. We have emails proving that there was a back and forth of them asking to like deplatform certain posts and certain
I don't think
stories.
that ever happened. I think there's one example ever of any politician ever saying take something down. It was Trump. When it was Trump, it was literally Trump. The one time Matt Taibbi reported on this. One person, Trump was called a pussy ass bitch and demanded that they take it down. Everything else, you're right, there was influence. And this idea that there was only influence on one side. Let's look at Matt Taibbi in the Twitter files. What did he get access to? What Elon gave him access to? What didn't he get access to? Everything Elon didn't want him to see. So this narrative was spun, and they used an independent journalist in Matt Taibbi and said, run with this, go show the bias. He didn't show all the bias. Matt Taibbi didn't tell us that Trump was demanding things get taken down. It's one-sided and it's apparent. And my only problem is I understand what you're saying. Like, I believe that clip that you're talking about. But if the counteraction to that is I'm going to take Twitter and then I'm going to have it, I don't even think it revolves around politics. You can look at those, what are those bubble graph things called? It's Elon, and everybody else combined doesn't have his imprint.
I think I really relate with what you're putting out, that there is always a double standard that goes on between the left and the right. They are always fighting for control of these major institutions so that they can win. Donald Trump and his team, absolutely, always trying to push for certain things to be pulled down, particularly during the first administration. But I think in the background of this conversation is a concern about the role that the wealthy and the powerful have to representation, our voices, our system of government. And it is undeniable, and the Twitter files reporting is part of that the federal government, the intelligence agencies, the alphabet soup of government entities are always trying to get into the background of these organizations, collude with Twitter, collude with Facebook, and suppress the views of everyday people in ways that I just think are creepy and totalitarian, and it changes hands based on whoever's in power. We should just be against that. Elon Musk has definitely ratcheted up the volume for the right as he has been in control of this platform, but I think you could definitely argue that government does not have the kind of control that it did before.
Yeah, they don't own Twitter, and we finally have a platform where we can speak, although there are certain issues. Like I think we should ban certain things off the platform.
Parler was lit.
If you go look at my Twitter engagements, you can watch lefties. Every lefty that has Twitter, if you go watch your engagement pre and post election, silence pre-election.
Same thing happened on the other side.
I know, that's what I'm saying. You're saying, like,
my engagement has been flat the entire time.
We have a voice, but
small
we don't.
accounts got to grow in that time.
So I'm not a Democrat. I'm not here to combat or defend the Democratic Party. I think that it is really important to look at what government overreach has on censorship when it comes to Palestinian outreach movements, when it comes to people who are a little bit more skeptical about pharmaceutical companies. Like, sure, I can see both those sides, and I completely agree with that. My criticisms of Elon aren't rooted in my defense of the Biden administration or saying that the government was perfect pre-2025.
DOGE is making the government better. Agreeers, please join me up here.
DOGE doesn't go far enough, but it's a great start. Right. I think for my generation, and the reason I really wanted to be here is because we are being taxed to death and our dollar is consistently being devalued through Federal Reserve money printing to subsidize government debt and government spending. And DOGE has been the first real effort to combat that. And specifically with the USAID scandal, I thought that the fact that the media immediately shifted the camera over to these Democratic legislators who were screaming about Elon Musk and calling him a Nazi and a Nepo baby, instead of focusing on the fraud and the abuse of taxpayer dollars, was just perplexing. And I saw these narratives become really popular even among friends and family. And it's just really sad to me that the one time we've actually had someone advocating for our interests, they're demonized.
So you believe that DOGE has found a lot of fraud and done something about it?
I don't think they've found enough. And frankly, to be clear, I think we need to cut most of the government spending. So I really don't think it goes far enough. And there could be more done, but they have been severely limited.
Got it.
Can I say mine has nothing to do with politics, nothing to do with liking Musk or anything like that. So where I come from is, Mom, I love you. Please don't hate me. So my mother works in the superior courts, right? They get to work from home 2 days a week, right? They still see cases, they still do all that stuff at home, right? Now, I'm not saying her, but people in the courts, right? There is a convenience to that, where in between your cases, you can do laundry, go to the store, walk your dog, work out, whatever, depends how much time you have, right? So, but the thing is, it makes it really convenient for you. So I will ask her, and I'll ask people like that work in her field as well. So just answer me this simple as that. Is it more convenient for you to be able to be at home and be able to do your laundry or walk the dog in between cases? 9 times out of 10, they will say yes, because it objectively is more convenient. The problem is, you working a job that services the public, it's not supposed to be more convenient for you. It's supposed to be more convenient for the people that you are serving. And so, whereas, somebody like my mom or certain people will not take advantage of that system, what DOGE is doing is basically saying there are people taking advantage of a system. It's not necessarily the actual employee's fault, not even necessarily the employer. It's the structure of it. And I think you can't blame somebody for enjoying being at home 2 days a week, right? Getting to dress up on top and then have sweatpants below. The thing is, though, that's not your job. And if you finished your case early or finished your reports early at work, you would just work on something else. You would just get to the next point. You wouldn't say, oh, I'm gonna go do something for myself now, because you're at work. You can't go to the store, you can't do that. Just because you're at home now doesn't mean it should be treated any less of like if you are in the office.
So you're saying work from home policies make less productivity?
Yeah, I just think, in my opinion, because you could do more work you would do more work if you're at the office. You can't go to the gym at the office. You know what I mean? You can't do that.
Gotcha. Go ahead.
So I think your point was mainly about the spending and actually trying to cut waste, fraud, and abuse and sort of rebalance the scales in terms of the government debt. Color me skeptical. I think we might agree that Social Security and entitlements are still just going to continue to run. We basically just are still paying interest on all of these things. Nothing is really going to change. I think at this point, conservatively, $160 million, billion, have actually been removed from government spending. That's not as important to me as readjusting the scales on how we think about the administrative state and whether or not they are impartial in how they do their jobs. We are living in an America that for the past 100 years has been misled to believe that the alphabet soup of agencies have no political interest in how things happen in Washington, D.C. and around the country. These are not impartial civil servants. A lot of these organizations do have political aims, and you can see that just in this administration in how they put political appointees atop the different agencies. This is not a very good system, and it robs everyday normal people from more power in their society, in the United States. And I think DOGE's main purpose, the main thing they've made better, is they've removed some of the illusion of this, and that's positive. Spending, I hope they fix it, but it's going to require major entitlement reform to do that.
The United States of America has been living in a lie since first Woodrow Wilson with, income tax, not supposed to have that. Federal Reserve, and that's been great. And technocracy, which was I was going to say in the last aspect of what's an expert, what's a... Now, the next one, FDR, who decided to take the phrase to protect the general welfare and decided to completely change the foundation of America, which was a government this big, and the Constitution to protect the people from the government, and decide that the government is supposed to help the people. If you think the government is supposed to help the people, please leave America. That is not what we are about. We are about freedom and individual liberty. We are about us and the government being, again, that big. So we've come to this idea where the government is supposed to help my Social Security, my welfare, all these things that have destroyed what it means to be American. And so DOGE, oh wow, they've cut 200,000 jobs. I want about 2.8 million of the jobs to be canceled. Remember that in Thomas Jefferson's time, there was 3,000 people that worked for the government. There's almost 3 million now. That is not what the founders created, and why we quickly became, in 150 years, the greatest country of all time. In that short period of time.
Wilson refounded the country.
Oh, yeah.
Wilson refounded the country on the belief that checks and balances were something that had to be limited by the expert class. The early progressive era, the turn of the 20th century, is a time where Darwinism is sort of running amok through the culture, and there is just a belief that we have become enlightened as people, and that popular rule by the legislature is not enlightened. It's not smart, and it's not the way to run a complicated society. And I think some of the people who disagree with us would say, we're a huge and complicated country. There's so much stuff that has to get done. And I'm going, where are the Congress? Where are our congressmen who are actually supposed to legislate and run the country? They gave up all of their power to the administrative state. DOGE has a huge role in helping people understand that, but I think you're in a losing battle when you get into nitpicking over how much money they save, because it's sort of just a black hole.
Let's go ahead and bring in the disagreeers and see what they have to say.
Here they come.
Yeah, so virtually everything that was just said is just completely incorrect. So
I saw you nod.
yeah.
Please tell me.
Yeah, so when Elon Musk says, I've cut government spending, he's either lying or breaking the law, because the branch of government that decides how much money we spend is the legislative branch. So the executive branch can't just start cutting funding for things. So
Yes,
that's
the government doesn't want to cut
number
the government.
one.
I know, shocking.
I'm just talking about basic civics
I
right now,
know.
like the three branches of government. When we talk about
talking
he's
about-
identified all this fraud, to my understanding, not one criminal charge of fraud has been brought against anyone in the over 3 months now. When we talk about he's found $150 billion, I think only 50 or 60 billion are actually itemized. And that is inefficient compared to the, people don't even know what inspectors general are. The government is audited every single year, dozens of times, by these people called the inspector generals. And Trump illegally fired a lot of them in his first week in office. And these people, just as an example, in the fiscal year of 2023, identified $93 billion in waste, which is way more than Musk has done. And they actually went through the proper channels of going through Congress and doing audits the right way. This idea that because he's in the private sector, that's good for the public sector, those are not comparable in the slightest.
Did you hear the story about DOGE gutting the FMSC? This is the Federal Mediation and Conciliatory Service. So this is a very obscure agency that popped up sometime in the 70s or 80s, which is a optional thing that people can use to actually settle disputes between government agencies. And this employs about 260 people. And Elon Musk followed up on 10 years of reporting that the people who work inside this agency were actually just living off of their company credit cards and doing little to nothing, commissioning portraits of themselves for the offices, buying storage units for their home stuff, some of them living abroad and then pretending that they were in Washington, D.C. and eating out for lunch every single day. One person even bought a storage unit to store the photo albums of their dog. This was 10 years of reporting that they just followed up on and went, no more.
So I think Stephen highlighted something great in his preamble, his monologue on the last time when we were back there. But the main spending for the government right now is in military, it's in Social Security, and it's in Medicare. And DOGE is not looking at touching any of these. The military has only increased with Hegseth in charge. This is not something that's going to remove the debt that our country has. We are targeting very minuscule parts of the budget for political theater. This is really to rile up conservatives and say, look at how much we're doing. We're getting rid of the condoms in Uganda. We're getting rid of LGBTQ programs. We're getting wokeness, guys. And it's like, okay, well, is this really substantial when it comes to the overwhelming debt? And when you look into a lot of those things, those aren't just like random things that Joe Biden or Barack Obama's like, yeah, condoms in Uganda, let's do that. These are programs that were approved by a congressional body. And it's nowhere near the sensationalist titles that people will have when you're having like increased contraception in places that have heavy amounts of disease. So you can change the flavor, you change the title however you want, but if you want these things cut, like Adam said, you got to go through the proper chambers. You can't just cut all these for that political theater just to say we got rid of all this.
And I think one of the biggest issues I have with this department right now is the efficiency to accomplish what? So right now, efficiency is just let's cut, and save money, right? Save money for what? How much money are we trying to save? Why are we gutting entire departments that were created to protect people, to ensure that they did have this whole liberty and justice for all? Because if we didn't have that, then non-government entities would literally be killing us. Right? So like when we're rescinding and we're trying to cut people in the FDA, right? And we're trying to reduce that workforce. Well, yeah, I'll be the first to admit, FDA, not necessarily the most efficient. Removing people from it is not going to help speed up the process of reviewing new medical technologies. We can look through what is happening at the FDA, right? We can look through what's happening at pretty much any
You wanna
department
form
and
a
see what their
committee?
goal is.
You want to form a committee to review what's
No, we
going
already
on
have
inside?
that. We
How
already
many
have
more people
auditors,
do we
but
need to
like,
make it efficient?
Well, let me
Guys,
say
I love
this.
the- I love-
First of all, he did bring people. So he did add people.
Pause. We get to hear from all the disagreeers, and then we'll talk more, okay?
Yeah, let me just say this. I think we have found, I applaud Elon Musk. He has found an enormous amount of waste, specifically fraud and abuse. And he did that by getting into the government and showing us how fraudulent he is. For example, if you have heard of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and you listen to a single Republican tell you what it is, from Congress to Mark Andreessen on Joe Rogan, to Mark Zuckerberg on Joe Rogan, to Elon Musk, they will all say verbatim the same thing. It is an agency that was created by Elizabeth Warren to debank people. That's a lie. She doesn't run it. It doesn't debank people. In fact, it keeps people from being debanked. And one of the big things the CFPB did and does is they try and keep X, Facebook, and all of these social media companies from becoming payment processors that don't have to follow the same laws as banks. And there were 280 complaints against Elon Musk's companies alone. And he walked in and he fired the inspector generals, and then he gutted it. And he did this at the CFPB, he did it at the National Labor Relations Board, where we also now know that there was a sudden spike of information going out, and Russians were using the created usernames and passwords that had been created 15 minutes earlier to try and log in. He went to the FAA. He was able to go and look at every contract that he was negotiating against. He went to NASA. He went into every one of these programs and he gutted them. And he made it so that he and his billionaire friends didn't have to keep the rules anymore. And all he had to do is hold this shiny object in front of everybody's face. Look, we're going to cut $2 trillion. Never mind, it's $1 trillion. Never mind, I only cut 150 billion. And you mentioned before, it's closer to 60, but if you want to take what has receipts, it's $32 billion. And we increased the budget by $200 billion. We're increasing the budget. He has saved us nothing. And he's hurt every one of you. By gutting the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, every one of you lost the ability to go when your bank screws you, when Chase comes in and they start charging exorbitant fees and they cheat behind closed doors, you all lost your protection.
Why would I pay those exorbitant fees?
Elon, well, for example, Chase, what they were doing is they were signing people up for additional accounts, or excuse me, Wells Fargo, signing people up for additional accounts. And they were charging exorbitant overdraft fees. And the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau was a way for me to go to them without having to hire an attorney and go up against Wells Fargo. And they would act as an intermediary between me and the government. And they clawed back billions of dollars for consumers. And because they went on and they just lied about it, and on Rogan every day, and every Republican just lied about it, you all thought that they were debanking people. They were protecting you. You let Elon Musk go in and gut the protections for you against the banks. Yes, sir. Yes.
Wait, I have
Yes.
one quick
Work for
question. You can
CFPB.
laugh when you don't have substance?
No, I do.
I have one quick question.
You worked a case with them, or you had a case?
No, I've just studied this in depth.
It made it sound like you actually had a case that you worked with Wells Fargo on through the CFPB.
So, Stephen, one quick thing. Like, you can laugh when you don't have substance. I totally get
Oh,
that.
it's
I
not
had a question
substance,
for you because I heard what you were saying earlier,
Yeah.
that there are a lot of government officials that are being lined by lobbying interest pockets. Why would a lobbyist be incentivized to line up a government's pockets?
Because the government can steal our money and use it for contracts that then get
So their interests are being taken over precedent over the American people's, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's
1000%.
And that's because they're getting money to profit, correct?
100%.
Okay, so the goal here should be reforming government so it actually acts as a body that protects the nation's interests instead of just letting the people who are having a profit incentive just take over that power structure. Because if you remove the government, which you keep saying, I know you might not be an anarchist, but all of your language is like, I'm done, I'm super libertarian, anarcho-capitalist, whatever the case.
No, I'm not, definitely not.
Like seriously, removing all of the government or removing any sort of protective agency for consumers is just gonna seize all of the power to those that already have the profit incentive and have the maximum amount of influence, which are these
What is the
oligarchs.
incentive of the government? Why do you guys trust the government more than the free market?
The government
Please
is not the
explain.
shadowy cabal of people
free
that
yes,
are
it
trying to
is.
The
fight
free
us.
market is what allowed for people to discriminate against people like
No,
me.
That's not
no, that is a
yes,
lie.
it actually
Oh,
was.
1,000% a lie.
It actually was.
No.
Yeah. Before
the
we
government
had-
was always the racist.
you're-
Always.
Oh,
it was
okay.
never
So
the
when
capital.
When a restaurant decided
let me
not
give
to
examples.
feed my grandparents when they would walk in, was that the government saying, go be racist?
The free market cares far more. These greedy, evil businessmen. They are so scared of these greedy, evil businessmen.
nobody's
They
scared.
care about making money. Whatever racism, sexism they will ever have, capitalism destroys that. If I wanted to start a basketball team and I was a gazillionaire and I said, I hate black people, I'm not going to have any black people, how would my team do? It would lose every game, wouldn't it? Or if I want to have a town without an Italian restaurant, even though I'm Italian, for example, how would that? The free market only cares about making money. There was train companies in the South right after the Civil War that allowed black people to sit wherever they wanted because they wanted about money. They don't care about racism.
Any libertarian that I scroll on Reddit, dude, I don't need to hear the whole monologue. I liked what you.
Then why do you trust the government more than free market?
Let me give you an example.
Dude, it's not about trusting the government at face value. It's about reforming the government.
I want the
to actually
government.
work on behalf.
I want the government totally out of money because that's ultimately why money gets into government. That's why people.
So where does money come from? You want to go back to a gold standard, right?
Yeah. 100%. Are you kidding? Are you kidding?
But can I ask you guys a question real quick?
Wait, no, that was perfect. That was perfect. Walk.
Okay.
Well, let me just. Go ahead.
Just real quick, a gold standard always leads to deflation because the supply of gold is limited and economic growth is not. So when that delta gets bigger, eventually the economy crashes. Like, this is basic monetary theory. I mean, like, I don't want to do an appeal to expertise, but like, I have a degree in economics and I just don't understand this worship of the free market. It's like it solves all these problems. The free market was what created conditions where these workers were working 7 days a week, 13, 14 hours a day. The doors were being locked.
Yeah, they could
just starve and die.
Just go starve and die somewhere.
Create your own company.
Yeah, everyone's going to be an owner. Yep, that's going to work well for
question?
enterprise.
Well, while we sat
at
back
the
there,
time-
you guys used a lot of examples
So simplistic,
about
dude. This guy's 6 years old.
about spending that the Elon Musk uncovered. Elon Musk, every time he uncovered wasteful spending, he showed a screenshot from usaspending.gov. That's been around since 2009. Our government told all of you where this money was going, and none of you knew it until Elon Musk did. It was a great thing that our government did. It was an act of transparency, and you guys are now arguing that the government is bad because Elon went to a website and posted screenshots of shit that had already been done. Just because nobody knew that website existed didn't mean it didn't. Our government, by the way, the Democrats, after 2008, Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, they pushed for this stuff. They pushed for the transparency, and it was the Republicans who fought against it. It was there the whole time. You all could have seen it, but you had to wait until Elon Musk told you he found it.
Elon Musk is a horrible father. Agreeers, please join me up here.
Look, I'm not going to pretend like I know the man's personal life. I've seen all of his tweets, though, and I think that he tries to present himself in a certain way. I think that having continuous unstable families and just replacing fatherhood with money isn't the best environment for people to grow up in. And I'll take the personal testimony of some of his kids, like Vivian Musk, or I don't know her last name now, but yeah, I think they're pretty clear on how he acts as a father and how he is the head of a household, if you could even say that. I think I don't know. I believe in alternative families. I don't think you need to have like a monogamous, like nuclear family in order to have a successful life. But I think that when you're continuing to just see yourself as somebody who spreads his seed for the next aspect of human civilization, like I don't think that you care about the children. You more so care about the idea of offspring.
And it gets to a point, like I think it was maybe Grimes who like their kid was having a medical emergency and first she tried texting him, then she tried DMing him, and then he just kept ignoring her, blocking her. Then she had to tweet at him and he suspended her account. And it's like, why can't you just help the kid with the medical emergency? Like at a certain point, like DOGE is not the most important thing in your life. And I feel like he puts his public image and this grandiose self-image, like I'm Tony Stark in real life, he puts that above like very basic human relationships, it seems like.
Got it. Yeah.
I don't know. I might be the only father here. Like, and I have a daughter, so I'm a girl dad. Another father over there. Look, it's hard. I don't always understand. I know one thing. I know that like my daughter needs my presence, and I know that she needs an example. And my job is to operate in an online presence. And like I think about every day, like, am I going to do things today that 10 years down the road my daughter's going to have to answer for? And he does something nearly every single day on Twitter that is vile, that is cruel, that is inhumane. If you go look back at his history of running companies, they're always filled with people who were suing him for mistreatment, specifically racial mistreatment, specifically sexual harassment. And as the father of a daughter, I don't want to judge somebody necessarily how they parent individually, but I can say that his public persona is not conducive to his children not having to deal with their father's mistakes and their father's anger and their father's words towards other people. So I don't think that shows that he puts his children first. It's clearly money first.
Let's bring up the disagreeers.
I'm uncomfortable with the word horrible, so that's really what I'm quibbling with. Is I just don't know enough to say horrible father. I really look at Elon and I see a lackluster man, where this is a person, I believe it's 14 plus children between 4 women, who has just been unwilling to commit and to give these people his full time, his full attention, and to lead a family. What he has done family-wise is not good. I just don't see enough to say horrible father. I like what we see with one of his young sons that he takes around with him everywhere. We need a more pro-family approach to that kind of thing. I think that's wonderful. But you mentioned his son, who identifies now as a daughter. Her name is what?
Her name is Vivian.
I want to be respectful as possible, but just disagree on principle. Like what he says about Vivian, he keeps saying, "My son is dead." That's really wrong. Yeah. That's really, really messed up for him to say that about his child, who identifies now in this different way. And he's not just saying, "My son is lost," or "My son is struggling," but to say "my son is dead" is acknowledging what Vivian is saying. Like the whole dead naming thing, right? Like, I was never that person, I'm Vivian. He needs to support his child in a different way. So that's the story that I've heard where I go, you've really messed up here. But the other 14 children, I just don't know.
Why doesn't that go to horrible then? To me, that seems like possibly the worst thing you could do. Like, you just, again, adopted, like the abandoning your child, just cutting them out of your life.
Again, I'm uncomfortable making a blanket judgment of this person's a horrible father because of some tweets I've seen between him and one of his children, who they've clearly had an explosive falling out. Something's really wrong there, but I just don't know enough, and I don't like making those kind of character judgments.
Yeah, and I don't think he cut Vivian out of his life. I think Vivian was deeply uncomfortable with who her father was, right? Like, she was uncomfortable with him being a billionaire. That was their first falling out. And so he sold all of his possessions and moved into a 2-bedroom house in Texas, and that still wasn't enough. So clearly that relationship has been really fraught.
Sold all of his possessions?
Well, not all of his possessions,
Yeah,
sorry.
being
dramatic. But he sold like his big homes and moved into a much more modest house. But clearly that relationship is really fraught. I think I also disagree with this idea of calling him a terrible father or horrible father. I don't think we know enough. Like, a private life is private for a reason. What we do know from his biography, because he gave Walter Isaacson unprecedented access into his life to interview absolutely everyone, Elon Musk had a really, really difficult childhood, was abused pretty badly by the kids at school and by his father. He's definitely on the autism spectrum, so he does struggle with emotional intelligence and with empathy. And so what we're seeing is a really complex personal life, like a really complex man that struggles with his interpersonal relationships.
Yeah, I think that's fine. Like, people, I shouldn't say I think that's fine, but I understand the nuance in somebody that's having trouble with social interactions, especially when they're as intimate as like a familial bond.
Yeah.
The thing is, you shouldn't be advocating to have all of your life in the public eye. And again, his need for admiration when he already has like the business mogul aspect of his life, it's just in conflict with him being able to be there as a present father. So like, I'm all here for nuance. I don't think that anybody inherently is evil. I think that people do evil things. And I think it's important. I think it's important to recognize that, like, if you are coming out and you're advertising yourself as this amazing father for all my kids, I'm propping X around because look at me, I'm such a great father, that's all showmanship. It's not something that is grounded in real affection. I'm choosing this child because it's the most easily moldable right now. If any one of my other kids, I probably wouldn't bring them around because they'd have other
I
kids.
think they have a special relationship,
that's why I mentioned
and there's
article
like
about the last 2 kids, my biological mom, hence the kid, because I knew somebody on the conservative side would say, he's bringing this kid around, bringing this kid to the White House and all this. But I mean, as you just made a point, you can't just pick the kid you want and then not have the rest. That's why I made it, my opening statement is to mention how, I'm sure she was a good mother to those 2 kids, right? Like, to those 2 kids. But it doesn't mean she's a good mother. You know what I mean? As a whole, that's just,
It feels like we should be able to call balls and strikes on this, though. Like, I'm a San Francisco 49ers fan. Like, we had this awful coach named Jim Tom Sula, and we went
you did.
and we went 1-15. We were horrible. Does that mean that Jim Tom Sula is horrible? No. But like, there's not much evidence that he's a good father. He's not there for the births. He's not there around them. He sometimes like lugs a kid around. Just like, I think if we take out the personal attack of it and just say, like, is he good at being a dad? Probably not.
The United States is turning into an oligarchy. Agreeers, please step forward.
I mean, Elon Musk is case in point of this entire prompt. I mean, he is the richest man on earth. He has one of the most powerful government positions. He's trying to get contract for things like SpaceX and Starlink with the government. So, I mean, the wealthy and well-connected, especially with Trump's cabinet, I think it's like more billionaires than ever before. I'm pretty sure everyone in his cabinet has a net worth of at least $100 million. So when we talk about the influence of the wealthy, they've always had some influence with super PACs and lobbying, but at this point it's like so direct where they are now in the center of the heart of power, and they, in a lot of cases, are just straight up calling the shots.
Yeah, I almost didn't step forward for this prompt because I don't think the United States is turning into an oligarchy. I think it was an important principle in even the inception in the first place. You can not just take that from Lefty Mason. You can look at John Jay, one of the founders of this country, who said the people that own the country are the ones who should run it. Like, this is very direct, and the people are complaining about technocracy or being an expert. Like, we're saying that oligarchs are the ones who should be calling the shots instead of the American people who are too pursued by their passions or, you know, wanting a better life or actually wanting to make sure that they have freedoms. Like, no, that might destabilize what the country's about. We should leave it in the hands of those who show that they deserve that, with wealth being the primary reason why. So I don't think that Elon is like the direct reason why oligarchies come to the United States. I think he's a symptom of something that's already here. And I think all of these folks who I've talked to today would agree with some aspects of that, because we're saying all these government agencies are bought with wealthy interests and they're being pursued by lobbyists and they're making decisions in order to increase the elite instead of the popular people. That's what oligarchy is. Let's not pretend like it's a small section of people. You could say the deep state all you want. It's people that are influencing politics with their wealth in order to get their interests over the American people.
So you got me with the John Jay bit, that like oligarchy was sort of in the original intention of the country. A lot of the founders were actually looking back to the writings of Cicero and the late Roman Empire and going, well, you actually want wealthy class people who have a stake in the future of the country to be part of its leadership class, as well as a permanent legislature and then an executive. It's part of the design. I think where I get off the boat is when you say that it's becoming more oligarchic in that power is more concentrated than it's ever been. Oligarchy is a small group of those wealthy interests. We have a lot of wealthy interests who are all fighting every single day in the United States for different pockets of power, different influential areas.
The goal's priority. You could say that the aims are different as far, or I guess you flip-flop those. You could say that the goals are different of these wealthy interests, but the aims are the same, which is that there is priority given to those that do have an absorbent amount of wealth versus people who do want more things like spending time with their family by not working as much, having more time on the weekend. These are all exceptions.
I don't think you could say that the aims of Michael Bloomberg and Sheldon Adelson, RIP, are the same. I mean, these are different sort of really rich, powerful bundlers.
You want to maintain your wealth,
visions.
right? Would they want something like a wealth tax? Absolutely. Would they want something like universal health care where they're having a progressive taxation, paying more into it? Of course not. So you could say that the goals of their corporations or their entities are different, but the aims are the same insofar as people with wealthy interests will prop up both political parties. Again, I'm not a Democrat. I'm here, I might be arguing with some liberals over here.
I'm a registered Republican.
Can
I think that you know, wealthy interests in these institutions are what are propping up so many of the candidates on both parties, and that's something that's important to recognize if you want to get to objective reality.
So to a degree, I think that it's completely fair for billionaires, millionaires, the wealthy to want to protect their own property. And donating money to campaigns and causes is a way to do that. It's almost financial self-defense. Like if the mob is at your door with pitchforks and saying, give me all of your money, you know, you should be able to defend yourself against that.
Don't you want to protect your interests?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a contradiction of goals. That's what's going on here, is that there are wealthy interests that want to protect their own aims, and there are working class people who also want to make sure that they're able to provide for their family.
Fundamentally, I don't understand the difference between what we have viewed historically as an oligarchy and now. J.D. Vance was bought. There's no question about that. He wasn't on a short list of VP candidates. They went to San Francisco, they raised a bunch of money, they came back, and he was bought. Every one of these VC tech guys, every one of them, if you can look into this, Curtis Yarvin is a great name for you to know. Sure. They all want to be oligarchs. They all want technocracy. They're investing in private cities. They want to privatize our entire government. You look at America, look at Russia. I think almost everybody agrees Russia's an oligarchy. What's the difference?
The Russian example is really interesting.
They vote, the votes don't don't count. The richest 12 people in Russia make all the decisions, write all the bills. Who writes all of our bills? Rich people. They just have a congressman sign their name to it. Fundamentally, I don't see the difference. And if you look from the introduction of trickle-down economics in '82 until now, wealth inequality is just, boom, skyrocket.
The mention of Russia is important because in most U.S. news coverage, when we hear that word, if it's not Bernie Sanders saying oligarchy, it's discussion of Russian oligarchs because of news coverage. And since the fall of the Soviet Union, what you had was this huge amount of industrialists who bought up all of the collapsed rubble of the Soviet Union, became super wealthy in different areas, steel, engineering, manufacturing, all that kind of stuff. As Putin consolidates power, he does not surround himself with the oligarchs for joint decision making. He has them stand down. He allows them to stay wealthy if they stay out of his way. And so what they have is this protected wealthy class who do control a lot, but they are not involved in Putin's day-to-day. That actually is a little bit of a misperception. They don't control him. He's given them permission to exist. And that's very different from what we have in the United States, where the wealthy and billionaires here are fighting the government every single day, depending on who's in charge.
That's happening in Russia too. I mean, with all due respect, like he has gotten rid of people who fought against him. The Russian oligarchs control the economy, and Vladimir Putin controls foreign policy. But if you can go read about Bill Browder, who was given a red nose. He went and he uncovered all of this. He showed how Vladimir Putin allows these oligarchs to swallow up company after company after company, and they are the ones making the economic decisions, which is exactly what's happening here. Trump brought them into the cabinet to make the economic decisions, while he sits back and does the stuff he cares about.
And taking it back to U.S. policy, like, do you think it's justified that Bill Gates has absorbed so much of the agricultural land in the country? Yes, thank you. Someone's agreeing with me. Do you agree?
That's the downside of capitalism.
Do you agree? Exactly.
That's
what we're talking about, dude. That's what we're talking about.
But we're not talking about capitalism in this whole debate. We're talking about, government efficiency. But yes, in that argument, yes, I do agree with you. He shouldn't, but that is one of those things. We are a capitalist society, but we can go to legislation. That might have been another.
Yeah, and I think we're in a late stage of capitalism where we're inching closer and closer towards not even having any sort of protection, or if you guys don't want to say protection, because I know you think the government's all out to kill us. Representation. Representation, that's what it is. And if we don't have good representation, we're going to be surrendering to those that have the most amount of influence and the most amount of power. And in a capitalist society, you would say that is wealth. That's what it's transferred.
Fair, but is something being oligarchic implied that there is no distinction between money and power, whereas you have plenty of people who have a lot of power in the U.S. that are not billionaires or even millionaires? I'm not saying that the current administration. But
wait. You just said that there's a lot of people with a lot of power in the United States that aren't millionaires or billionaires.
Yeah, I mean,
explain to me that power.
For example, the average everyday politician that can get elected.
How do you classify power?
Well, okay, so in oligarchy, and I could be wrong. Somebody tell me if I'm wrong. It's implied that the people who have that money, like we said, that small group, they bought up a lot of the rubble in Soviet Union, we use that example. The perception would be that they kind of control Putin's government. Now, I know his argument was that he controls them.
So you're arguing that oligarchy is a small set of people that run everything in society?
I am arguing that, yeah, I guess that's closer to what I'm trying to get. But
I would argue that that's not the case. I don't believe that wealthy interests control every aspect of the entire country, right? I think that they have the most amount of influence. And what I'm saying is, if I have to go to the ballot box and I have to elect a neoliberal Democrat and a neoliberal Republican, and I'm trying to decide what's the economic future of this government's gonna look like, it's really hard for me to feel like I have a choice here when the chef's already decided the menu. I'm not making the order if the chef is the one that's deciding.
Yeah, you're saying like if we broke down red in America, blue America, no Democrat Party, no Republican Party, but like we had the millionaires party or the wealthy party versus some sort of class-based party, that there would be a uniparty at the very top and they would kind of control everything.
I think
but we don't have that because of the amount of actual ideological disagreement amongst our wealthy class.
But we might now.
Adam,
because he's picking. Elon Musk is the only person who exists who is going in and getting rid of departments that are investigating him.
That's a political appointee.
I mean, he's the one giving rid of
I understand
them,
he is,
well.
but he's the only one who's ever done it, and it's because of the investment he made into Donald Trump. And Donald Trump said, "Yeah, I'll just give you this access." And so now you can look at an oligarchy like it's set up that way, like we structured it that way, or you can look at it in the way that like they're going to tell you you're living in a democracy while you're living in an oligarchy. That's what they do in Russia.
Yeah, but propaganda can tell you you're not living in a dictatorship and you are. That's the whole point of it. I mean,
it's an oligarchy.
I mean,
yeah.
Can we find as a group a middle ground statement encompassing everything we talked about today?
The government needs to be more efficient. Is that a fair middle ground statement?
Elon Musk is
I love your
representative
pom-poms.
of the problems that we all have with underrepresentation, with government being in bed with the government. He is literally the epitome of everything that I think most of us agree we dislike. We don't want one person to have that much
I got a good
unelected
one.
power.
Elon is the product of a corrupt society, and we might disagree on what that corruption is.
No, I think
You know
he's
what?
the
Actually, I agree.
antidote.
He's the opposite.
I'm
He's
closer to
anti-
that.
Wait,
Exactly.
guys,
No, I'm closer to him. Yeah.
Can I say why I agree? Because it might be able to sway them.
Sure.
I think it's the same thing as we say, like, okay, there's a lot of like bad that's come from Trump getting into office from your side, right? Is that fair to say? A lot of you guys that don't like Trump would say there's a lot of bad that's come, but you guys have a lot of really good politicians that have come with the sole fact of hating Trump that they've been elected to office. Like they were a local activist, now they're there. So when we say, yes, Elon is the product of a corrupt society, for us it might be that's a good thing. Like we have a corrupt society and he's coming in and he's gonna fix it. For you guys, I think that's a fair nuance, because for you guys it would be the inverse, but I get what you're saying. I think that's an awesome one.
What about more simple? We are only talking about Elon Musk because we don't feel represented by our government.
Yo.
Yes.
Good to meet you.
Yeah, man. No. Dude, I'm sorry.
Happy meeting you, Dad. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.